I hid the truth in plain sight, behind a smile, a slice of cake, and a perfectly planned birthday party. Everyone thought it was just another celebration. Friends, family, coworkers, they came to toast my wife, Vivian, unaware they were stepping into the ruins of a carefully crafted lie. What began as champagne and laughter ended in gasps, shattered trust, and one final act of truth broadcast on a giant backyard screen. They watched the montage, wedding photos, vacations, the birth of our daughters. Then came the shift. My voice, calm but unflinching, revealed what I had discovered: affairs, manipulation, and betrayal, not just from Vivian, but from our daughters as well. And I wasn't there. Because I had already disappeared, left behind nothing but evidence, divorce papers, and a farewell message. Some say it was vengeance. I say it was freedom. My name is Ethan Graves, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought mattered, and finally found what actually does. If you've ever questioned your worth, doubted your sanity, or stayed silent when truth begged to speak, then this story is for you. Because sometimes, peace begins where pretending ends. Thank you, truly, for being here. Whether you stumbled upon this by accident or came searching for something familiar in someone else's truth, I want you to know that your time, your attention, and your presence mean more than you realize. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about becoming. About what happens when a man decides to stop surviving in silence and start living in truth, even when that truth costs him everything he once thought he couldn't live without. I'm not here to play the victim or paint myself as the hero. I'm here to show you what happens when life shatters and you choose to rebuild with bare hands and brutal honesty. So if you're ready, if you're tired of pretending everything's fine, if you've ever wondered what it really means to start over, if you believe that truth still has value in a world full of performance, then come with me. Let's begin this journey together. Turn the page, dig in, and let the silence break. My name is Ethan Graves. I'm 39, and until last month, I was a regional logistics director for a multinational retail chain in Dallas. After 2 decades of backbreaking work and promotions, I cashed out with just over $600,000 in vested shares and walked away, not because I was finished with the job, but because I was finished with the life I was faking. My wife, Vivian, 37, is a corporate PR consultant, sharp-tongued, sharp-dressed, and dangerously good at convincing people she's someone she's not. For the last few years, I've been a prop in her curated image of success. I saw the signs. The late-night strategy calls. The gym obsession. Her phone always on silent. She even stopped sleeping in her bedroom, said I snored too much. I checked her car GPS one night when she claimed to be at a client dinner. She was parked outside a hotel. I hired a PI. 3 weeks later, I had what I needed: texts, photos, even audio. She was seeing her client, Nathan Hayes, a smug tech CEO. And get this, he's married too. But I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I planned. Vivian's 37th birthday landed on the same day as her company's charity gala, a black tie event I used to dread. Not this time. I baked the divorce papers into the center of her birthday cake, metaphorically. I had the caterer slice and serve her a custom-made cake that held the envelope. Her face twisted when she found it. But the real show was just beginning. As she opened the envelope, the LED screens behind the stage flickered to life, her affair in 1080p. I'd uploaded everything, including a voice note of her saying Brandon's wife wouldn't dare leave him because she's too old to start over. Brandon's wife was in the audience. Vivian never saw it coming. And me? I was already packed for Colorado. A cabin, fresh air, peace. I left the city, and her, burning behind me. I even suggested throwing Vivian a surprise birthday bash, lavish, elegant, and packed with over 60 friends, family, and co-workers. On the surface, I was the picture of a devoted husband, doting and supportive. But behind my calm demeanor, I was carefully staging a reckoning. The grief I once felt had calcified into something sharper, something deliberate. I'd already booked a cabin in Steamboat Springs for the week after. One-way trip. No goodbye notes. No second chances. But before I disappeared from Dallas for good, I was going to leave Vivian with a birthday memory that would stick with her like the smoke of a burned-down house. The final push came when my private investigator brought me a USB drive filled with footage from the home security cameras. The ones I'd installed years ago for safety, and which Vivian clearly forgot still existed. There, in our living room, she sat with our daughters, Clara, 25, and twinsy Isabel, Ren, and Elena, both 23, glasses of Chardonnay in hand, laughing like it was a damn bachelorette party. They weren't just confessing affairs, they were comparing them. Elena chuckled as she shared how her gym trainer was way more attentive than her husband, while Isabel joked about meeting a fourth man to spice things up. Then Clara, my oldest, scoffed, "Dad is clueless. Mom is Brandon, and I've got Matt. We're all just doing what makes us happy, right?" Each replay of that video was like acid. Not just betrayal, but arrogance. Contempt. They weren't ashamed. They were proud of it. I took the footage to my son-in-law, James, the only decent one of the bunch. Married to Isabel, works in real estate finance, straight-laced, a good man. When he watched it, he looked like he'd been gut-punched. "I knew she was distant," he whispered. "But this? All of them?" "Yes," I said. "And you're going to help me?" The projector was rented. The audio cued. I gave James exact instructions. After dessert, after the crowds had a few drinks, play the file I sent. The first 5 minutes are just photos, Vivian as a child, us on vacation, her glowing in candlelight. Then comes the truth. And I'll be long gone. The second part of the video would deliver my final blow, a compilation of damning footage and a calm, recorded message from me. No screaming. No theatrics. Just the truth, played in front of everyone Vivian had ever tried to impress. Before leaving town, I sent a final email to my attorney, Lena Carter, confirming she'd be in place at the party, documents in hand. Carmen, like me, had once believed in her marriage, to none other than Nathan Hayes, the same Brandon who now called my wife his escape. When I showed Carmen the pictures, Vivian and Brandon, naked on a secluded beach in Cabo, hands where they shouldn't be, her reaction was silent but devastating. Her eyes met mine, and without a word, I knew she understood every ounce of betrayal that lived in my bones. "We won't raise our voices," Carmen said quietly. "We'll let the truth do that for us." That night, Carmen would walk in with 2 crisp envelopes, one for Vivian, one for Brandon. I wouldn't need to yell. I'd already made my point in silence. Yes, this would fracture my family, perhaps forever. But Vivian planted this garden of lies, I'm simply letting it bloom. I won't touch her. I'll let her ego be her undoing, collapsing under the gaze of the very crowd she's curated for years. By the time that party ended, I'd be gone, my bank accounts moved, my new identity already activated under a business LLC out of Telluride. I'd cleared out the house, packed my belongings, and left only 3 things behind: a handcrafted birthday cake, an envelope with the divorce papers, and a USB drive tucked neatly inside the frosting box. My final gesture. I crushed my old phone in the garbage disposal, watching sparks fly. Then I walked out the front door without looking back. When Vivian returned that Friday from her client summit with Brandon, she was glowing, tanned, laughing, and oblivious. The backyard erupted with cheers. She stepped into her spotlight, her eyes folded into every smile. And right beside the bar, sipping a drink with ice too loud for comfort, stood Carmen. Waiting. Watching. Ready. Around 8 p.m., my daughters, Clara, Isabel, and Elena, gathered everyone in the backyard, their voices a little too cheerful as they announced, "Dad couldn't be here tonight, but he sent a special birthday message for Mom." Guests drifted toward the big screen as the garden lights dimmed, wine glasses refilled, and laughter echoed, no one suspecting the storm about to hit. The video began with my face filling the screen, calm and composed. "Happy birthday, Vivian. 37 years old, and somehow still as captivating as the day we met." A warm montage followed, wedding photos, the girls as toddlers, beach vacations, anniversaries, Sunday mornings in bed. Nostalgia rippled through the crowd. I saw it in the watery smiles on their faces. Then, my tone shifted. But I can't pretend anymore. There's something I discovered, something I can't unsee. The screen faded to black, then blinked back on, hidden camera footage from our living room. There sat Vivian, Clara, Isabel, and Elena, laughing, swirling wine, unfiltered. "I've been bored with Marcus F.O. Isabella years," Vivian scoffed. "Brandon's the upgrade, charming, ripped, and speaks in full sentences." Elena chimed in with a smirk, "Honestly, I don't even remember the last time I thought about my husband during sex." Isabel, "If they're too stupid to ask questions, they don't deserve answers." Silence fell. You could hear ice clinking in forgotten glasses. Women froze mid-sip. Men sat rigid. A few couples quietly stepped away. Others stared, as if afraid they might see themselves on screen next. Then my voice returned, "You might think it's hearsay. So, here's more." Cue, a montage of Vivian and Brandon in Cabo, checking into the resort as Mr. and Mrs. Holt, bare on the beach, feeding each other dessert, riding horses under the stars. The video ended with me, once more. "Vivian, if this was your birthday gift to yourself, I've got mine ready too." Right on cue, Lena Carter stepped from the crowd in a midnight blue dress, holding 2 envelopes. She handed one to Brandon, who paled. Then she strode to Vivian and handed her the second, my signed divorce papers. And then, with calm precision, she slapped her. "That's for your arrogance. Happy birthday." The party? Over. The fallout? Just beginning. By the time the final guest had left, the illusion that held my family together was gone. The house, once a stage for celebrations, anniversaries, and curated perfection, now stood hollow, drenched in silence and shame. Vivian slumped into a patio chair, her once flawless makeup smeared across her cheeks, the envelope I left gripped in her trembling fingers. What was meant to be her shining moment had become something else entirely, not a birthday, but a reckoning. A public funeral for the lies that had propped up our marriage for far too long. I wasn't there to see it unfold, but I didn't need to be. I knew every second of that night would live on in whispers, in strained dinners, in relationships forever altered. The truth, once released, has no leash. My new phone buzzed with a message from Carmen. "Justice served. Your plan worked perfectly." I allowed myself a grim smile as the Texas plains faded behind me. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I simply turned my back on the ashes of my old life and headed north toward Telluride, Colorado. That night, as I drove beneath a moonless sky, I called Carmen. Everything went exactly as planned, she confirmed, her voice edged with both relief and exhaustion. We laughed, not with joy, but with the clarity of survivors. 3 days later, I arrived at my late grandfather's property, tucked just outside Telluride. A worn but sturdy cabin sat on the edge of a field bordered by pines and silence. My uncle had done just enough to make it livable. The rest? That was up to me now. I registered my new identity, opened accounts, and hired a contractor. The cabin would be rebuilt, and the barn converted into a tractor repair shop, something I was once damn good at before I was ever called an executive. Carmen and I kept talking. At first, just legal follow-ups. Then longer calls. Shared childhood stories. Her 2 daughters, Amber and Meadow, were skeptical of me, understandably. But once I showed them the unedited footage, their skepticism turned to rage. It wasn't just my life Brandon had destroyed. It was theirs too. Not long after that night, Carmen officially filed for divorce. She closed her practice in Austin, sold her house, and began planning a quiet move to Telluride. Meanwhile, I got a call one evening from James, Isabel's husband. His voice cracked under the weight of things unsaid. "She barely eats," he whispered. "She cries herself to sleep. Says she can't even look in the mirror." He was talking about Isabel. About what she'd become after the truth exploded in their backyard like a firework with no beauty. I told him what I would have told myself years ago: if you have doubts, get a paternity test, but don't make rash decisions in a storm. Thank you, he said before hanging up. For not going off the rails. Just telling the truth. While work on the house progressed, a few boxes arrived from Dallas, furniture I'd once stored, old tools from the garage, and a few trinkets I'd given Vivian. I donated most of it to the local Goodwill. That act felt more spiritual than symbolic. I was making room, not just in my home, but in my head. Carmen visited for the first time in early October. I met her on the porch with a bouquet of wildflowers. I'd cooked dinner myself, cast iron steaks, baked potatoes, grilled vegetables. The kitchen was only half finished, but the lighting was warm, and the air smelled like cinnamon and cedarwood. We didn't rush into anything. Our wounds were still healing. But as the night wore on, we sat in the living room listening to old Dean Martin records, the amber glow of a lamp washing over her face. For the first time in years, I felt still. Vivian tried to find me, of course, hiring PIs, digging through LinkedIn profiles, even reaching out to old coworkers. But I disappeared cleanly. Off the grid. Unreachable. Meanwhile, my daughters began drifting from her. Clara was first, then Elena. Allison, the oldest, stayed in touch. One night, she called and said quietly, "Mom keeps saying you planned this for years, that you're vindictive. But I think you finally just stopped letting her win." I didn't need revenge anymore. I had peace. And peace was enough. 6 weeks after the fallout, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Dad?" Allison's voice was barely a whisper. "I need to see you." We met at a roadside diner in New Mexico, roughly halfway between Telluride and what used to be home. She looked fragile, thinner than before, her eyes ringed with exhaustion and guilt. She barely touched her coffee. "I've been in shock since watching that video," she admitted, her hands trembling. "I don't even recognize the woman I was in it." She went on to tell me she'd taken my advice. A DNA test confirmed James was indeed her daughter's father. It didn't fix everything, but it helped. She returned home, committed to intensive therapy. My counselor asked when I started lying, she said, eyes fixed on the table. And I realized. Mom taught me that lying was love. That truth was weakness. Her honesty was raw. I saw the girl I raised, not the one shaped by Vivian manipulation. The twins had a different response. Isabel and Elena tracked me down at a motel I'd stayed at briefly after leaving Texas. They pounded on the door late one night, demanding explanations. But it wasn't about understanding, it was about lashing out. I let them in, heard them out, then calmly picked up the phone and called the front desk. Security arrived in minutes. After overhearing bits of their raised voices and emotional outbursts, the guard, an older man with poor context, assumed they were causing trouble in a different way. They were escorted out under watchful, judgmental eyes in the lobby, the misunderstanding adding another layer of humiliation. When I told Carmen that night, she laughed, then sighed. They had to hit rock bottom somehow. Apparently, they sought out Allison next. Hoping, maybe, that she'd join them in their indignation. Instead, she hit them with truth. "How would you feel," she asked, "if your husbands talked about trading you for a weekend and a bottle of wine?" For once, the twins were silent. That night, Elena texted me. "Dad, I'm sorry. We didn't know how lost we were." I didn't reply. But I knew healing had begun. No one came to Vivian's defense. Not family. Not friends. The truth had scorched every bridge she thought unbreakable. Meanwhile, Carmen and I quietly began to rebuild, not just our lives, but something new together. Her daughters, Amber and Meadow, made the decision to relocate to Telluride, renting a small apartment near the edge of town before eventually settling into rooms in my newly finished farmhouse. They enrolled at the local college, both pursuing MBAs, while working part-time in nearby shops and cafes. Life moved forward, not quickly, but steadily. The girls started calling my place home, which hit harder than I expected. At a small housewarming barbecue, as I stood at the grill turning steaks, Amber walked over and handed me a beer. "I don't know if you're planning on being our stepdad," she said with a small smile, "but if you are, I think I'd be okay with that." Carmen laughed from her chair. I just nodded, unsure what to say, but something unfamiliar bloomed in my chest: warmth, pride, peace. Ethan Graves, was no longer someone's accessory or emotional punching bag. I had reclaimed not just my freedom, but my identity. Each morning, I brewed coffee on my porch and watched the sun rise over the pines. The quiet wasn't empty, it was healing. Some would call what I did revenge. I don't. I didn't destroy my family. I revealed what had already destroyed it. The pain was real, but it was honest. And that made all the difference. Even my daughters were changing. Slowly, they were learning how to tell the truth, even if it hurt. And me? I was learning how to trust, not blindly, but openly. Last week, James sent me a photo of his son, my grandson, wearing tiny denim overalls like the ones I wore growing up here. Attached was a note: "We're teaching him that honesty isn't optional, it's everything." I saved that photo. In September, both divorces were finalized. Carmen sold her old practice, moved permanently, and bought a nearby log cabin. She transformed it with warmth, antlers on the wall, checkered quilts, and shelves of books Brandon never let her read. One starry evening, on that cabin deck, I proposed. And this time, the tears were from joy. "I never thought I'd trust anyone again," Carmen whispered as we stood beneath the old oak tree. "But you rebuilt that in me." We were married right here at the farm, no fanfare, no extravagance. Just an open field, wildflowers, and a sky that didn't care about past mistakes. It was everything our former marriages weren't: honest, grounded, and free of ego. All three of my daughters were there. Allison came with James and little Colin, who now ran through the barn shouting "Grandpa," like he'd been doing it forever. Isabel and Elena, once hardened by pride, arrived hand in hand, humbled, changed, but stronger for it. Amber and Meadow wore matching dresses and stood proudly at their mother's side. Uncle Roy gave the blessing, and neighbors who'd helped rebuild the barn sat on handmade benches beneath string lights I'd rigged myself. During the reception, Carmen took the microphone. Her cheeks flushed with joy, her eyes steady on mine. "I've been given a second chance," she said, her voice carrying over the fields. "With a man who's not perfect, but who is real. And we have one more piece of joy to share." She paused. "I'm pregnant. Our baby is due next May." The crowd erupted. I stood frozen for a second, then laughed, deep, full laughter, and pulled her into my arms. We were going to have a child. A future neither of us had ever allowed ourselves to imagine. That fall, I finished the agricultural machinery workshop, serving farms across the county. I also accepted a remote consulting role with my former company, smart pay, zero office politics. Vivian sold our house and disappeared into a rented apartment in Boulder. Her career disintegrated. Her memoir, An Independent Woman's Journey, never saw daylight. No agent would touch it. Even the advocacy circle she once belonged to had walked away. Allison told me, "She drinks too much now. Still says she doesn't know why we left her. She'll never see it. But that's not my burden anymore." Each morning, I brew coffee and rest my hand on Carmen's belly. "This child," she told me recently, "will grow up knowing truth." And I promised her, that's the only thing we'll ever give them. Those who lived honestly have begun to heal. Those who deceived and manipulated have been left to face the wreckage they created. And Ethan Graves, the man who once believed he'd lost everything, now understand that I was never the broken one. I was the one who survived it intact. Last week, all three of my daughters, Allison, Isabel, and Elena, came to the farm for dinner. Carmen had slow-cooked elk stew, and Amber and Meadow brought fresh bread from the local bakery. The dining room was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but the energy was something deeper than joy. It was peace. Earned peace. As I looked around the table, at these 6 women, each from a fractured past, now seated together like a family forged through fire, I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for the betrayal, not for the loss, but for the clarity it forced into my life. For the way it stripped everything false down to the studs and demanded I rebuild on something real. I lifted my glass. To truth, I said. However painful it might be. They each raised their glasses in return. Carmen's eyes locked with mine, full of strength. Amber and Meadow grinned, bumping shoulders. Elena wiped a tear she didn't want seen. Isabel smiled, genuinely. Allison, my oldest, nodded slowly, her hand resting on my grandson's shoulder beside her. And in that moment, every lie of the last 25 years dissolved. Vivian's betrayals. Brandon's smugness. The shame. The silence. All of it. Gone. The past no longer had power over me, not as pain, not as rage, not even as memory. It was just something that had happened. Not who I was. What I was now, was whole. Not perfect. Not untouched. But whole. Outside, the wind rustled the cottonwoods, and somewhere in the barn, the tools of my new trade waited. But inside the house, under the glow of worn wood beams and soft laughter, I finally understood. This was the life I was meant to live all along. If you've made it this far, through the lies, the pain, the heartbreak, and the rebirth, then I want to thank you for walking beside me. My name is Ethan Graves, and I was nearly erased by a life I thought was real. But I survived. Not because I was the strongest, but because I finally chose truth over comfort. Now I ask you, what truth are you avoiding? Drop a comment below. Tell me what moment in this story resonated with you. Tell me where you've been broken and rebuilt. If you've been betrayed, if you've been silenced, I want to hear it. Not because I have all the answers, but because you deserve to be heard. If you've made it this far, then you've seen it all, the lies, the betrayal, the aftermath of being deceived by someone you trusted. And if reading this stirred anything within you, whether it was anger, sorrow, or even a glimmer of hope, then I need you to hear me. Stand with me. Stand not just for me, but for every person who's ever been left to pick up the pieces of their shattered life alone. I want you to speak up. Tell me what you would do in my shoes. Share this with someone who needs to understand that silence isn't a sign of weakness. Sometimes, walking away isn't quitting, it's an act of survival, done with dignity. To those who've walked through their own personal hell, whether it was a loveless marriage, a life filled with deceit, or betrayal from those you thought would always have your back, know this, you're not weak. You're not broken beyond repair. You are stronger than you realize, and you have every right to reclaim the life that was stolen from you. It's never too late to stand tall again. To anyone out there caught in a toxic relationship, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or even a family member, you don't have to stay. The past doesn't define you, and neither does the shame they try to place on you. You are not bound by the chains of their lies. The only thing that matters is the life you choose to live for yourself. When you finally decide to reclaim your peace, don't wait for the perfect moment to take that first step. Trust me, it won't come. There's never a right time. There's no ideal day where everything will magically align for you to finally stand up and walk away. The only right time is the moment you make that choice. It's when you decide, deep down, that you've had enough. Enough of the manipulation, enough of the guilt, enough of living in a cycle that doesn't serve you. Stand up, but not with anger or aggression. Stand up with facts. Stand up with your dignity intact, even when they try to strip it away from you. Stand tall with a stillness that speaks volumes, louder than any of the lies they ever told you. Because the truth has power. Your truth has power. And you don't need permission from anyone to speak it. Rebuild your life. Even if it means starting from scratch. Even if it feels like you're crawling through the ashes of what was once your world. The peace you're seeking is not out of reach, it's there, within you. You just need to claim it, to know that you're worth every effort it takes to rebuild what was broken. And when you find it, the peace, the quiet mornings, the genuine connections with people who see you for who you truly are, without masks or pretense, hold on to that. Hold on to it tight. Because that is the life you were meant to live. That is the life that's worth living. Now, it's your turn. Stand tall, speak your truth, and start over. You've got this.